Alright everyone, welcome back to the channel now. President-elect Donald Trump has already started to pick who is going to be in his cabinet, and it's been a couple days since he first started to fill in these roles like, Secretary of State, Department of Homeland Security, etc., etc. In the first part, we discussed Secretary of State, Department of Homeland Security, Rubio being Secretary of State, Noem as DHS, Zeldin heading the EPA. Now, as of recording, we've had quite a bit of developments, and Trump is already getting to work more and more, and even more positions have been filled out as he is working, I would say, a lot faster than even I anticipated, and we're already starting to get more of an idea of what a Trump administration 2.0 will end up looking like as these days go by. So yes, let's get into Trump's recent hirings now. Just like I said in the previous video, it's hit or miss. More hits than misses, though. Some of these hirings in this latest batch are seen as firebrands and unexpected and, anti-establishment and whatnot. Others are also seen as a little bit more establishment-friendly, but not even remotely close as establishment-friendly as the people that he decided to fill his first cabinet with. And that was the initial problem with the first administration. And I left this out in the first video, but this is something that Vance actually mentioned in one of his interviews that he was doing on, I believe, Fox News. And he mentioned this clearly, and he acknowledged it, and he said that the reason why the first administration had a lot of people cycling in and cycling out, the reason why you had so many of these hiring problems is because he had all these people, Jared Kushner, Mike Pompeo, William Barr, Rex Tillerson, Jeff Sessions, John Bolton, all these people that were just undermining the administration would come in and try to control Trump in an attempt to do just that. Undermine the administration. Because Trump had this idea that if he were to hire a bunch of neocons, because of his party affiliation, he would think that they would just go by him with whatever he does and that they would play nice. But they didn't. So it didn't work. And that was the initial problem that happened in the first administration. And, it is true, Donald Trump, he's been around the block before. He has learned a lot since his first administration. He knows who he can trust, and he also knows who is perfectly fit and who is the right person for that particular job. If you've ever watched the show Apprentice, you obviously know he is a master at finding the right people, and is also the master at getting rid of the wrong people. There are a few exceptions, obviously, but still, there are some people that Trump believes he can trust to help out in attaining his goals and to enact his kind of agenda that he wants to see enacted. He's assessed a lot of people, he's got a lot of time, he's been assessing a lot of these people for pretty much 8 years essentially, waiting for, this exact moment to finally come. And that's exactly what he's doing. And as I said in the last video, we've already gotten such a big improvement since 2016. And again, like I said, hit or miss. I would say, we got, for example, Kristi Noem. We talked about her in the last video. I think that it's okay. Is it a 100% perfect choice? Not exactly. It's sort of like if you get a B+ on your report card, your parents do not complain about it whatsoever. A B+ or an A- is still relatively good. Lee Zeldin as the head of the EPA, that's another one we talked about in the previous video. That one I liked. He kind of has this tenure in terms of experience in the climate caucus on the Republican side in the House, and he is a solid litigator who is going to make sure that he can cut down on certain regulations while at the same time still being able to protect the environment. I think he'll do a great balance with that as head of the EPA. Rubio, I wouldn't have chosen for Secretary of State. I guess it's all right. It's acceptable. It's not some game changer, but you could have done better, admittedly so, just saying. I did mention that he does have neocon tendencies, especially in his early days in the Senate. The best I can describe him is more of a Ted Cruz Republican. He's basically Florida's Ted Cruz. Another thing that I did mention in that video is that when he becomes Secretary of State, it would shift our primary focus away from the Middle East, Russia, China, and the Korean Peninsula. Obviously, that doesn't mean that we'll completely ignore them altogether. Those are just as important. But our primary focus would be more of a Monroe Doctrine approach and focusing mostly on the Western Hemisphere. Again, not necessarily the worst thing in the world. However, it's good to have a focus on Latin America, especially when Rubio was the one who talked Trump out of military intervention in Venezuela back in 2019 during that election that was going on there. Rubio also comes from a family who has experienced communism before. Both of his parents fled the Castro dictatorship in Cuba, so he obviously knows firsthand. So Rubio has some improvement. And he isn't necessarily as bad as he used to be, even though, again, I would have chosen someone who's a lot better. So I will expect to see us going back to the Monroe Doctrine, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're taking our focus away from the Middle East and all these other places. Those will still be a focus too. But, we'll just have to wait and see how it works, but he's certainly much better than Pompeo. That's for damn sure. Elsie Stefanik, another Trump loyalist. I'm not a huge fan of her. She doesn't have a lot of experience in foreign policy, but again, her as UN ambassador, much, much better than what Nikki Haley was, who Donald Trump ended up appointing last time around. So, still a big upgrade nevertheless. Tulsi Gabbard here, though, really, I think, is the kicker. Now, I really wanted her to be in this administration, and I'm actually so glad that it's actually happening. Tulsi Gabbard is obviously very fantastic when it comes down to foreign policy. Even back when she was still a Bernie bro Democrat, Donald Trump actually hinted multiple times about making her his Secretary of State or Department of Defense back when he was still hiring for his first administration. Obviously, it never came to fruition, but if it did, he would have had a far better foreign policy overall. Now, with Tulsi Gabbard, she is set to be named Director of National Intelligence. Now, we're not 100% sure whether this is actually going to happen, but you see what's going on. If you get Tulsi Gabbard on board, while I would have preferred her to be Secretary of State, Director of National Intelligence, that sounds like a good role for her. Trump basically promised her a position in the administration. She helped lead the transition. She's got plenty of experience, and she's intelligent, well-spoken. She more than likely, I believe, wanted this specific role, and it seems like she got it. Her being a national intelligence director, such a huge W in my book. Then we got Pete Hegseth, and he's going to be in a proper role at the Department of Defense, and this is one of the more compelling selections, foreshadowing another compelling one, which we will get into. He's a combat veteran with several Bronze Stars, multiple deployments, very knowledgeable, Harvard graduate, Ivy League degrees, smart guy, not a lot of experience though in terms of his position in the military, but still has everything else you could possibly want. He's not a general though. Never was, which is usually what is selected to lead the Pentagon. So it's sort of interesting to see what happens as far as his confirmation is concerned. Now, I first heard of Hegseth through Fox News. He was one of the weekend hosts for Fox and Friends, and occasionally, if either Steve or Brian is not available, he would fill in for either of those twos during the weekdays. But I'm still very curious to see what, Pete Hegseth is going to do as the head of the DOD. Now, ever since Trump selected him to lead the DOD, there's been a lot of complaints, especially from the legacy media, about him not being qualified. He was even called a Nazi because of his tattoos that he had, even though all the tattoos that are on his body are not in any way symbols of Nazism or white supremacy. But still, people like to call him a Nazi because of his tattoos, and the fact that he's also conservative and worked, or at least used to work at a conservative news network. So now he's automatically a Nazi because of that.
Add the Secretary of Defense nominee, Peter Hegseth, the Fox News commentator as well, because this is someone who, weekend host, important distinction. This is someone who, is known to be a white supremacist, known to be an extremist, whose platform, whose book is basically about his opposition to the advancement of black officers to the top brass.
So people are basically saying that he's unqualified or that he's a Nazi only because he's a Fox News contributor. But the guy has a lot of military experience, even though he's not a general. But as long as you have a really good rap sheet and a really good resume and a ton of experience in the military, I think you should still be able to head the DOD just because of that experience alone. And Pete Hegseth does have a lot of that experience already. And again, he's also a really smart and intelligent dude. Harvard graduate, that's still a huge plus. Although he did say some things in the past, like, he rallied for John McCain at one point, and he was announcing, like, Lindsey Graham and shit like that, and that doesn't necessarily go over terribly well. Although, again, combat veteran, has a lot of military experience. I think that he obviously knows a thing or two about defense. So I still think it's a solid choice, nevertheless. Now, of course, obviously, we have to talk about who's going to be Attorney General, and that role will be going to, no, not Ted Cruz, but good guess nevertheless. Donald Trump has picked Matt Gaetz to be his Attorney General, the representative of one of the greatest vacation spots just behind South Florida, the Panhandle. Now, I don't think anybody expected this to happen, and quite frankly, I think this is one of the biggest hires that we have ever seen from the Trump administration so far. Now, I will note that Gaetz has resigned from the House not even a blue moon ago, so this is likely going to happen, unless he's like, taking a big gamble for some reason for Trump. Personally, I think it's specifically because the ethics panel is going to release their report on him. This might in some way affect his confirmation. I don't really think they had that much evidence to arraign him, but I still think that they were still looking for like a reason to kick Gaetz out. So he said, look, they're going to remove me anyway. I quit effectively. But that could be part of the reasons. We'll wait and see what happens, but Gaetz being nominated for Attorney General, I don't think that this was anyone's first choice. I don't think anybody expected Matt Gaetz to be in the administration. But again, you have somebody who is a Donald Trump superfan. He is extraordinarily anti-establishment, full-blown MAGA, and America first through and through. He was the one who took on Kevin McCarthy head-on, even back when it wasn't even popular, and he got him out as Speaker of the House, and we were able to get a new Speaker. I even thought that he was going to be Speaker of the House himself until this news broke, or perhaps even taking over the new Senate seat with Rubio becoming Secretary of State. And as I mentioned earlier, the DOJ has been after him, and he's got some scandals. He's not necessarily the perfect choice. But you gotta understand, as someone who doesn't live in his congressional district, but lives in his home state, he is a fighter. He is a fighter in U.S. Congress. He's one of the guys who refuses to be bought and paid for, openly and admittedly, and he always stands his ground. And this is one of the reasons why he is one of my favorite people in Congress. He is a fighter. He fights not only for his constituents, not only for the people of his state as a whole, he considers himself a fighter for the American people. And with him being under investigation, he is somebody that wants to completely gut it, and he is not afraid to, and I fully respect that. If he wants to go out there and, this pick, some people will say it's like revenge, but it's also at the same time accountability. So I can totally and clearly see why Trump picked him specifically to be Attorney General. It's not solely about revenge, but accountability at the same time. And Trump sees that in him. He is going to make sure, if he gets in, obviously, if Gaetz does end up becoming Attorney General, this could be a chance to really overhaul the DOJ and really do something special there. So this is an amazing pick by Trump regardless. Yes, I get he does have some ongoing scandals, but again, lest we forget, this guy is a proven fighter. And if he's a fighter in Congress, he certainly will be a fighter in that role. Now, Gaetz may or may not get through the Senate confirmation process. It's looking iffy, because it does seem like, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, they may not vote to confirm, but some of these other Republican senators are like, there's a 50-50 chance that they could fall in line. And don't forget, we also have our Senate Majority Leader, the Mount Rushmore dude himself, John Thune. I don't mean to roast my South Dakota boys who are probably watching, but I think your state is not necessarily too well known or that appealing when the only thing that you guys have are grizzly bears and Mount Rushmore. That's probably why John Thune is even there. But yeah, with Thune being Senate Majority Leader, I don't necessarily see him voting to confirm Gaetz, although he has promised, after being elected, that he will make sure Trump's hirings are all confirmed. Most of the others, I think, they'll get in through fairly easy anyway. They're not going to stonewall Rubio, for example. Tulsi, I think, gets in. Noam gets in. Zeldin, that'll be a good pick. I think that the Republicans, want to give him like a little bit of more recognition, and that way it would help their efforts in the Northeast, especially in New York. But with Gaetz, I'm not so sure he will get confirmed, but I think that, Trump, he's serious about it. I think that he seriously wants Gaetz as Attorney General. Whether or not he has the actual votes to do it remains to be seen. Again, Collins, Murkowski, they have already stated that they're not going to vote to confirm him, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. Finally, in terms of the other department that is informal, not technically appointable, you guys have already seen them on the thumbnail of this video. You have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, where's Elon going to go? Where's Vivek going to go? They're going to create together a brand new federal department known as the United States Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Yes, they intentionally named it that just so they can match it with the famous internet meme. So anyways, they created DOGE to, cut waste, clean house, trim the fat, cut down on the bureaucracy, drain the swamp, as they say, and whatnot. And to also, advise the president, work with the president, give the president ideas, help the president make better decisions, but kind of like, doing their own thing at the same time. It's like a shadow agency, so to speak. And this is exactly what I've expected and pretty much anticipated Elon Musk, and maybe not Vivek. I didn't know where he was going to go to. I thought he would have done, Secretary of Agriculture or some other secretary role. But this whole DOGE thing, this is where they're going to be like, right beside him and JD Vance. And this is, in my opinion, pretty fucking epic and based because we need to do that. We need somebody in there to help the president make the right decisions and warn him when he's making the wrong decisions. And also, at the same time, surprise, surprise, we also need to cut down on the debt and reduce our spending significantly. I believe that's the whole point, and that a lot of the permissive funding is actually military related. There is plethora of funding available to be cut, and what you have to do is, if you're looking for waste and efficiency levels and things like that, look at the budget of an agency and or a bureau or whatever it is and say, okay, well, here are the things that we are paying for with taxpayer money. And this is something that we need, and that's something we don't need. This sub-department doesn't need to exist at all because it only reigns over stuff that we want to cut. This other agency over here, we can cut that as well. This funding can be cut, that can be cut, etc., etc., etc. And also, at the same time, you'll also be an advisory role. So that way, DOGE would also be effectively used to advise Trump and other people within DC, specifically on this one key issue. I think this is a great idea. Overall, I don't necessarily think that it will be that overwhelming of a success, at least that I know of, because, this has never been done before. We're long overdue for something like this. I think this is such a spectacular idea, but I don't really think you're going to see like, oh, we found $10 trillion in wasteful spending. They'll pick away at some of the more, shitty stuff. Advise certain bureaus that need to be reduced or have their growth halted. And if all or any of that is accomplished, it's still a major accomplishment. So that's pretty good, and it will help cut down on the debt. And, a lot of people said that in the first term, Trump kind of sort of broke his promise on the debt, and he didn't really have like a set agenda. But now we see he has people right beside him, right with him, by his side, that are looking to enact that agenda. So overall, so far from what I'm seeing, solid pick after solid pick after solid pick. Like, some of these picks you can really say, like, are like a B grade. Some are like an A or an A+. Like, for instance, there are a few picks that I specifically really like. Gabbard, Gaetz. I think those are, like, some great picks. Whether Gaetz gets confirmed or not is still very much up in the air. Although I don't think they'll be able to, like, stonewall Gabbard. I think she'll be fine. Rubio, again, like I mentioned in the last video, the only mixed bag alongside Stefanik. Zeldin, top-notch. Noam is solid. She also has a lot of extra hands with Holman and Miller, so she won't be alone. Hegseth is good, former combat veteran and a Harvard grad, very tough and smart individual. So you see, all the spots are getting more and more filled with all these great people. Now we just need to get, hopefully, Carrie Lake, Dan Bongino, and a few of these others, Michael Flynn even, on board to be in the administration somehow, and find sort of a place for them. Now, it looks like RFK Jr. is going to be more of an advisory role, although that final decision, as of recording, doesn't appear to have been made. And then you have certainly Ron Paul, Laura Loomer, some of these others who aren't going to take cabinet roles or anything like that and be part of the administration. They're just going to be working with the administration, rather. So ultimately, so far, Trump is doing a lot better this time around. That's the good news. It doesn't mean that, every hire that he makes is going to be a perfect candidate for that position. But overall, though, when it was maybe a C plus or a B minus in 2016, when you upgrade that to a B plus or even an A minus, yeah, that's pretty good. So overall, with these hirings that we're seeing so far, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. We'll see what other positions get filled. We still got plenty of others, press secretary, a bunch of these others and whatnot. Always dynamic, never static, so this is only part 2, and if more major news tends to break, I'll be sure to update you guys in a part 3 of Trump's cabinet picks, so make sure you stay tuned for that. This is why you subscribe to the channel. That way you will know when that video comes out. Not only you're helping me out a lot, you're also helping yourselves a lot too, because I'm your news guy. I try to keep you guys up to date with everything that I got, including each and every single one of these hirings that are happening. We've already did part 1, we got part 2, and there's definitely going to be a part 3, because this is only the tip of the iceberg. We still got a bunch of hirings that need to be filled, and a bunch of other people that need to be in the administration. So make sure you are staying tuned, make sure you are subscribed, and make sure that the notifications are set to on, all not personalized. And I like to know what you guys think about these hirings so far. Are these good hirings? Are you skeptical about the hirings? Do you think these are bad hirings? Who do you think should be in the administration? Who do you think is fit for what position and why? Who do you predict is going to be next in the administration? Anyways, I always like to pull a Philip DeFranco at the end of every video and end the conversation straight down to you guys. So make sure you let me know what you guys think about this administration hirings so far. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the little notification bell. Be sure to follow me on all my social medias. Links are in the description below. Share this video around with your friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, enemies, whomever. Definitely helps me out a lot, helps the video grow, and helps grow the channel if you were to share this video with whomever you know. Again, we may have reached the tippity top of the mountain, but we're only halfway there. So many positions need to be filled, so much needs to be done. Even though Trump appears to be working very quickly with filling up some of these roles in his cabinet, we still got a lot left. So part 3 and maybe even a part 4 if applicable. So again, as I keep saying, I'm your news guy. I try to keep you guys up to date with all this information. That's why you should subscribe. That's why you should turn on those notifications when you subscribe. So anyways, guys, like, subscribe, ring notifications, and until then, take care, talk soon, and I'll see you guys in the next one. You're awesome.